Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Draught For Upside. I am Brewery Mark. With me, as always, is Danger Cole.
Oh, and feeling more dangerous than ever, buddy.
And we also have the usual cast of characters. Chris Emmerich, staying warm down in Florida. How's it going, Chris?
Bastard.
I am feeling good. I started drinking a little bit early. It's nice to be on the podcast and the show and not be sick. I am excited. I'm hyped. I've got a lot to talk about. I've got some good takes. I've got some bad takes, and I'm gonna let you take it away while I continue this beer here.
All right. And also joining us, our PGA expert, Adam White, who I heard you had an interesting club fitting at your job today.
Yeah, it's always nice when local celebrities come in, although Danger didn't know who he was because he's clueless when it comes to hockey.
True
But
story.
the day started off with scraping about an inch of ice off of my car so I could actually have some visibility while I drove. And midday, I've actually worked with them before, but Anthony Manta of the Red Wings popped in with AA, we'll call him. Any Wings fan or hockey fan would know him as well. But that was a nice surprise. Worked with him and had him hitting drives about 340, 350 by the time it was all done. It's a good time.
So what kind of clubs does Anthony Mantha play with?
Play some very heavy, stiff driver shafts. He ended up in a Callaway driver. He was tailor-made last year, but yeah.
You said stiff shaft.
Extra stiff, as a matter of fact.
All right, so I have a question for everybody here. In front of me, I have 3 beers to start to show off with. Which one should I start with? I have the most excellent Founders Blushing Monk. I have a Bell's Hop Slam, and the classic Founders All Day IPA.
If I were you, I'd shotgun the IPA, the all-day IPA, and then I'd mix the other two together.
A Hop Slam with a Blushing Monk.
That's right. Mix them both in one giant glass.
I like your style. I'd say start with that.
I was going to recommend the same thing. I'm feeling the same way. Let's get some beer chugging going.
Yeah, I like it.
So it sounds like, Chris, you're enjoying yourself. What are you drinking?
All right, so I started off with a Modern Times City of the Sun. This is a nice, hoppy, juicy IPA. It's only 60 IBU. It's out of California. I was lucky enough to pick one up at Total Wine today with a can date of 115. So definitely a nice treat. Sometimes these are 3 months old by the time I find them. I'm about to crack open a Smoothie Dreams, which is a ale brewed with milk, sugar, raspberry, and vanilla. And I have a Out of the Lunchbox, which is a peanut butter, boysenberry, salt 7%er from the brewery. So probably going to drink all of those tonight. My wife's going to get mad because I'm probably going to snore, and she might assault me.
Nice. Danger, what do you got?
Oh, well, I decided enough of this not having a beer during our show. That's just unacceptable. So I'm going to make my show night be my exception to my rule. And I have found something quite delicious from my good friends over at Off Color Brewing in Chicago, Illinois. And I have their beer Stave Yard. Stave Yard is a Old Bruin style ale. Old Bruins are a rather sour beer, and I've not had this one yet. So we'll see where it lands on the chart here when I open it up.
I love sours.
Heck yeah. So it's an oak barrel-aged old ale blended with a young ale and batch soured with lactobacillus, which my doctor tells me is good for digestives.
Yes.
Let's see.
That's what I hear.
See how it tastes.
It comes in yogurt, right?
That's right. That is correct.
And Adam.
So he told me to eat yogurt. I translated that as lactobacillus beer.
So, Adam, what do you got tapped?
I am actually sipping on a little Four Roses bourbon.
Beautiful.
Left over from Super Bowl Sunday. And might tap into a little Massacre from Wolverine in a little bit here.
Ooh, yes. Oh, man, Massacre, man. So I've been selling beer for quite a number of years, and part of the job sometimes is standing in the grocery store or party store, convenience store, what have you, aisles, tasting beer with people. And one of my favorite things, man, is always when somebody comes in, they're like, hey, I really like barrel-aged stouts. Can you help me find something? And I'm always happy to walk down the beer aisle with somebody, and I always find Massacre because it's usually readily available. They make quite a bit of it, and I'll point it out and be like, right there, it's one of my favorite things. And they pick it up and they go, yeah, I don't like lagers, and put it down.
Eh.
Like, it just cracks me up. It's like, yeah, okay, guys, like there's two styles of brewing beer, and that's called lagering and ales, and that's the only difference is how you decided to brew that beer. Otherwise, you can pretty much come up with any flavor from any style of beer using lagering or traditional ale brewing. It really doesn't matter. The fact that it's a lager means nothing. It is just as thick and delicious and rich and bold as any imperial stout out there. It just happens to be fermented with lager yeast and then aged in bourbon barrels, and it's freaking delicious.
That's one of my favorites. I pick up at least a 6-pack every year when it's released.
Absolutely.
So, Danger. So there was some interesting commercials on the Super Bowl this week
That's right.
that pertain to the beer world, that have a lot of people kind of a combination of, I don't know, mad, confused, just, I don't know. It was just a weird vibe of what like Budweiser was putting out there.
Sure. So let's give a little background here. The FDA at some point is going to force pretty much everybody to put ingredients labels on their beers, right? So it's not law. It's still being debated. It's not necessary yet. But Bud Light has decided to take the stand of that they are going to come out first and say, look at our beer. Look how there's nothing in it. And for some reason, be super proud of the fact that there's nothing in their beer. I get it. I mean, my wife and I are both trying to lose some weight, and counting calories is a good thing, and it's fine. But to be on this bandwagon of what's craft beer trying to hide from you, we're plain and open about what's in our beer. It's mischievous, man. They're dirty. They're trying to escalate a problem that's not really there, right?
Yeah, it's hilarious because I thought the same thing. As soon as I saw them advertising the nutrition label, I'm like, it's been common knowledge for like 2 years now that was coming. They're going to be required to do it to be in any kind of chain store.
Correct.
So in they're marketing it as, oh, we're the first ones. Look at us.
Yeah.
It's like,
and it's funny because they talk about their beer and they said our beer is only brewed with only 4 ingredients, and they say water, barley, rice, and hops, which is quite funny because the actual 4 ingredients of beer are barley, water, hops, and yeast. Rice is actually considered in the group of barleys and malts and grains, which is quite funny. And then the other part of the commercial is bragging about not using high fructose corn syrup. Well, I don't know if anybody knows why that's funny. It's because, they don't use high fructose corn syrup, which of course is a negative buzzword in the nutrition and food world. It's because they use basically the same thing but made from made from rice instead of corn.
Yes, they use
it's
rice
basically
syrup.
an ingredient that's completely and utterly interchangeable. And there's some argument whether corn syrup and rice syrup, if rice syrup is better for you, because one is fructose and one is maltose, and there's arguments over that. But it's just hilarious. It's like when Miller Lite came out with the triple hopped brewed Miller Lite, and everybody's like, "Ooh, triple hop brewed." Well, the basic brewing recipe to make a beer is you add hops near the beginning of the boil, near the middle of the boil, and near the end of the boil. Basic science of how to make a beer is hopping it 3 times. Every single beer is hopped 3 times. That's just how you make regular beer.
Yeah, and they never made it clear either if it was 3 different hops or 1 hop 3 times.
Right. And it was actually, brilliant marketing on their part. And it was a very big pushback against the craft brewing, because this happened, I don't know, when was that, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, when they got on that kick. And I think it was very clever of them, because what they did was instill in the minds of people who drink Miller Lite that when you go to a bar that may offer these craft selections and you're getting pressured by friends or wait staff or what have you to try this craft brewing, right? A waitress might come up at a place that has 80 different beers, and you're looking at it and you ask your bartender or waiter or waitress and you say, okay, in your head you're going, okay, I don't want to order Miller Lite. I want to order one of this cool crafty beers. Okay, Miller Lite is triple hopped brewed. I like hops. Give me a hoppy beer. and then that person who drinks nothing but regular domestic beer gets handed a Two Hearted or a Humalupalicious or what have you IPA from around the country and immediately spits it across the bar because it's the most bitter thing they've ever put in their mouth. Right. So it was really brilliant because that person then looked at, say, Train Hopper from Witch's Hat, and they spit that out. And their first thought is, oh my gosh, craft beer is gross. And then they look at the label and they go, oh my gosh, Witch's Hat makes terrible beer. IPAs are disgusting. And you just made that person go right back to drinking Miller Lite. It was really devious. And I think they're trying to play that same kind of game with this labeling.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm just not sure that the person that's drinking Coors Light, drinking Miller Lite, really cares about corn syrup so much.
No, I don't think so.
I mean, I think you could. I mean, look, at the end of the day, if you drink too much alcohol, it kills you. It's kind of a poison. You're poisoning yourself to get the effects of corn syrup's not really a big deal. Like,
right. And on the opposite end, it's not like anybody's under any pretense that craft beer doesn't have a large amount of calories, because it do, and we know, and we drink it anyways.
Yeah, and I mean, but the real story here is that they were willing to go out and they jobbed out the night, the Bud Light night, just lost in his first match, his first joust, at least that they showed publicly, and I think that's huge. Like, you just don't see that a lot of times.
That's pretty funny. Yeah, that commercial, I enjoyed that, watching the Mountain crush the Bud Light night.
Yeah, that was awesome.
That was pretty cool. No, that was pretty awesome. So, it's just interesting. I pulled up some articles today on the difference between corn syrup and rice syrup, and it's really nothing. It's arguable things. It's a different type of sugar, but it's the same kind of sugar. It's still a processed sugar product. It's still not a all-grain beer. They're still cutting corners, and they don't do it because of the flavor. They do it because it's super freaking cheap, right, Mark?
Well, right, yeah. You think about, all the silos of rice or corn they would have to have and the labor to move that around, or you get a bag of syrup.
Right.
And you put it in there. It's still just a fermentable sugar that's highly concentrated, so you don't have to use a lot of it. And corn and rice tends not to change the flavor of the beer much. So
right.
There you go. It's super easy. I mean, I've honestly done it in the craft beer world. I've used rice syrup and corn syrup. It's a common process. So I think it's funny that they're taking it to that level, but it shows you too that Budweiser isn't just concentrating on the craft beer market anymore. They went right after Miller with that ad.
Sure, they're going after their competitors. And Unholy Toledo just posted in our chat room, which is live at LennyMelnickFantasySports.com. You may go there and click on Listen Live and come check us out. During the show, we're on from live from 7 to 9 on Wednesday nights on the Legend Fantasy Sports Network. But Unholy Toledo just posts in here. He goes, I'm a classless shithead. Pabst Blue Ribbon. Hey, man. PBR is the lifeblood of brewers. You go to any brewing festival where we're setting up, then we're not drinking IPAs and stouts. We're passing around cans of PBR, Stroh's, Black Label, High Life. We all love and drink those beers. And, I'm not a hater on people who drink domestic beer at all. I mean, it was still 75% of the beer drinking public is still drinking domestic beers. I'm just saying, the marketing campaign is just kind of funny, and I'm not sure it works. So, but yeah, absolutely. We love our PBR. I mean, Mark and I have had several cans of cheap swill between the two of us.
Yes. And it's fun too when you find those bars that pride themselves on look, can you do the old-fashioned beers? And you just have to do it, right?
Right.
You have to do that.
That's right.
Flight of beers from when you were a kid and your grandpa used to give you sips, right?
Heck yeah, man. At the World Expo of Beer in Frankenmuth coming up here in May, one of our favorite things to do is all the brewers after the first day of brewing, we all go down to Tiffany's in downtown Frankenmuth, and they usually have $1.25 cans of Black Label, which of course used to be brewed in Frankenmuth. And yeah, we all sit around and drink those one after the other, after the other, after the other.
All right, so we are Draught For Upside, and if you couldn't tell, we talk a lot about beer. John and I are from the beer side of the house, and We're also sponsored by I'mABeerHound.com, which is a great site. They do lots of great beer events. That's their main thing now, is setting up events, especially in the Lansing area. Where do we want to go next?
Well, I think we should get back on our Super Bowl recap and be done with football for, till some breaking news comes out. What do you think?
Yeah.
Or until next week when the AAFL comes out, Hey,
right, exactly. Ready.
it.
Yeah, who wants in on an AAFL fantasy league? Anyone?
I do.
Anyone?
I am 100% in. I've researched the quarterbacks, the premise of the league. So, from what I heard, they really want to get heavy into that because that is what, they recognize that's what drives the sport. So maybe we'll talk about that later, but there's not really leagues for it now. So we'll see.
Well, maybe we'll start one and we'll be pioneers.
I was going to say, has anybody heard if DraftKings or FanDuel is going to do anything with them?
I would imagine that DraftKings would.
They're probably a sponsor.
I'm surprised that they haven't, just given the fact that they run the CFL leagues and, other fringe sports like League of Legends and things of that sort. So I'm surprised that they haven't. There's just not a tremendous amount of resources. I did do quite a bit of research on it, probably during the Super Bowl, if I recall, because it was not a good game. Were you guys entertained?
I mean, I was slightly entertained. It wasn't a great scoring game, but I did like that both teams were switching up strategy throughout the game, which I have talked about time and time again, that good coaches need to change their strategies. And they kept trying. Nothing was working. So it was entertaining to watch.
When you're saying that, and in terms of the Rams, what strategy were they changing? Because to me, it looked like Sean McVay kind of like wasn't doing anything to change his strategy. He wasn't switching anything up. I think he kind of lost the game going into it.
Sure.
If you go past week 8, week 9, the Rams were just a bad offense. They were a bad team, and it was boring. I sat there, watched the game, and I was thinking about how people don't like watching baseball because they think it's boring. People don't like watching golf because they think it's boring. That game was boring, guys.
Sure.
It was a terrible game. And it wasn't just like the defense was playing good. It's not like we were looking at the 2001 Baltimore Ravens here. We were talking about a defense in the Rams that gave up like 9 or 10 100-yard rushers, gave up huge amounts of points. We're talking about a Patriots team that people marched up and down on. They weren't as bad as last year, but these were not defensive juggernauts. And nobody was moving the ball. Nobody was taking chances. The Rams were running the ball every single first down through the first half. Todd Gurley didn't get any touches. It was pretty bad.
Yeah, it was a great coaching matchup of Bill Belichick versus Wade Phillips.
Right.
It was all defense. It was everybody seemed to ignore the offense in that game.
And that's really more what I'm talking about is it was fun watching the Patriots keep trying a few different things. It was fun watching the cuts to Wade Phillips. I don't know. I don't mind when games aren't blowouts. I think it definitely Kansas City versus the Saints would have been way better. But, hindsight, it's all good. So
here's one question before we get into it, though, is did the best two teams make the Super Bowl?
I mean, I think the Patriots could be considered a contender for one of the best teams in the AFC. I mean, their record was fantastic. They rose to the challenge. I didn't like the Rams. I liked them earlier in the year, but like Chris said, they really fell apart the last half of the season.
No, they weren't the best two teams. The Rams. The Rams didn't play a good game, with the exception of the Dallas game, where Dallas is bad on the road. Probably since like I said, week 7 or week 8, they just ran really pure. The Saints should have beat them, but they screwed themselves. They were not the best team in the NFC. They were for the first 7 or 8 weeks, but they weren't after that. And Wade Phillips, you're right. It was interesting to watch him shut down the Patriots, at least in the first and the second quarter. But then it got kind of old. It's like, is something else going to happen? Like, come on, let's make some adjustments here. Let's pick on Marcus Peters, but not having Josh Gordon or any type of receiver that can attack
Exactly.
deep really, really, really hurt them, and it allowed the Rams to kind of play with the game in front of them.
Absolutely. That's why I really think you might see them take a big swing at Antonio Brown if they think that they can put together one more run before Brady gets out of town. That would have opened that game up. Just one big play receiver. That's all they needed. One guy out there, and they just don't have it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and on that end, I mean, the Patriots ran really pure too. I mean, look, you run into like, I think this Super Bowl kind of exclamation points on Bill Belichick, because this was not a year that Brady played very well. He played very well in maybe one or two games. This wasn't one of them either. But this was a game where they were just, it was a great game plan. They were coached fantastically. And I think if you talk to him, privately, if you had that kind of audience with Bill Belichick, he probably would have told you that they shouldn't have won this game. They shouldn't have won the game before. And who knows what happened with the Chargers, but all of these games, I think the other team was better than they were. They weren't better coached. They weren't more well prepared. They just had better players, but the Patriots put it together. And so, kudos to them. I'm not trying to take anything away from them, but they just weren't the better team almost any time that they were out there. And they did everything to give the Rams this game. The Tom Brady interception in the beginning, the missed kick, only being up 3-0, they did everything that they could to give the Rams this game, but the Rams couldn't do it because, when the bright lights are on, Sean McVay has not – he's a 33-year-old guy. Not a lot of experience. I heard he was out on the town a ton Super Bowl week, so, maybe that had something to do with it.
I was going to say this. It seemed to me like New England made it to the Super Bowl and won the Super Bowl all based on experience. They've been there, they've done it, they know how to deal with everything. And you could kind of tell, it wasn't Brady's best game, but he was able to keep everything in check. He knew where to go. Like Unholy Toledo pointed out, they couldn't shut down Edelman at all. So, Brady just kept feeding them.
Right.
So, and to me, that's just, it's experience. It's being wise in the game. And it's Belichick out-coaching basically a rookie coach in McVay.
And let's talk about where these teams go next year. I mean, the Patriots, I have not looked at free agency. I have not looked to see whose contracts are up. I have not looked to see who's moving. But they've got Sony Michel and James White that I believe are locked up. I mean, Sony Michel was a rookie. So that's pretty much good. I mean, Edelman's not going anywhere. Gronk probably will retire. But they might talk him into sticking around one more year. I think if they do find that outside guy, if they do get a guy like Antonio Brown or another piece similar to that, he probably could be talked into playing one more year. They obviously still have Belichick. Do the Patriots make yet another run next year? I mean, their division is soft.
And I don't.
Can they get there again?
I honestly don't think they're interested in Antonio Brown because, Brady's arm is not what it used to be, and I think this is why they got rid of Cooks, is he can't make those deep throws anymore. Everything is within 15 yards. This is Edelman and Gronk territory. And, that's why Hogan had such a bad season, because all he does is run straight down the sidelines and hopes he gets hit with the ball. So I don't see Antonio Brown tends to be the striker, even though he's getting older.
Yeah, and I don't think they'll take him anyways because he's got a year left on his contract, so the trade offer would have to be huge, and the Patriots just don't play people. It'd be more interesting to see like somebody on their way out. That's their claim to fame. So I don't think it'll be Brown either. But I think they do.
Antonio Brown comes home to Michigan.
I'm hoping Antonio Brown goes directly to the 49ers. That's what I'm hoping.
Well, so here's the thing. Like, let's touch back on a couple of those things. Brady was never a guy that had a great arm. He just never has. I mean, when you have Randy Moss, it makes you look like you have a great arm. I could throw passes to Randy Moss, and 30 yards down the field, he would go up and get that ball. Hogan's not a great wide receiver. The most receptions he's ever had in the season is 41. Using him as your deep threat, he's just not going to beat a lot of guys. He's, if the guy stays with him, he's not going to get that ball at its apex point, and he's not going to beat a lot of guys. He is somebody that's going to work as somebody in this Patriots offense as a secondary guy that's going to go downfield. But as your primary guy, even Marcus Peters was keeping up with him. I think the Patriots, just by the simple fact that they're in the division that they are, they can game plan that the way that they do. They have a very good chance of getting a first round bye or getting at least a home matchup in the first round of the playoffs. And so they're always going to be viable from that sense, especially because you have a team constructed like no other, where Brady is not making that much money and taking it away from the cap, so they can put it into other things. So, I think, and I think Gronk said he was going to come back. I don't know. I mean, I think that they still have the ability to compete, but I really do think Kansas City probably will upend them just based on, how good Patrick Mahomes is, not so much Andy Reid. And that looking at these wide receivers that are free agents, I mean, let's see. I'm trying to find somebody that's, Tyrell Williams is a free agent. He would fit well into that offense. Kevin White, Golden Tate, Randall Cobb. I mean, a lot of these guys are slot guys that would fit really well, but that takes away from Edelman. So I don't know. I don't know if there's a deep ball guy that can kind of stretch the field for him, but even without that, they're perennial contenders.
Yeah, and I'm looking at this too, and how well the Colts played at the end of the year. If they can make a few minor adjustments, if they can get somebody to complement Ty, I mean, that team's was looking great too.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of I don't want to say younger teams, but there's a lot of teams that I think can compete next year. And the Colts is a great catch. Is they were coming on at the end of the season. They just didn't have what it took at the very end.
Well, and here's a guy that I just pulled up, and he was a little further down the list, but it looks like Dontrell Inman, who played really well for the Colts towards the end of the season, even specifically as a deep threat. Looks like he's a free agent. He only made $800,000 only last year. So he's a guy that I think would fit into that role. Sure, he's not Josh Gordon, but you don't really need to be. You just need to be somebody that can take advantage of one of the two corners another team has. So, like I said, I think that their outlook, the Patriots, as long as Bill Belichick is there, I think it looks good. On the other hand, I don't like the Rams. The Rams, this was their window. They're losing, or two of their offensive linemen are like 70 years old. How long Wade Phillips is going to be there? If that offensive line collapses, Goff, like, are you going to pay Goff, or are you just going to go draft another quarterback? I would draft another quarterback. I mean, there's just a lot of pieces that either need to be paid, or are getting really old, or just complete free agents on that team that I don't know how they put it back together.
Sure.
This was their shot.
And it looks like Sue, is the kind of guy that's going to take the next contract. He's probably not going to stick around long. I mean, Aaron Donald, when his contract's up, he's probably going to take the biggest money and walk away. So I think you're right. I think this year was their year.
Donald just got paid.
He did just get paid.
So Donald, you just paid Donald. You paid Gurley. You've got all this money invested already in a couple of these guys. So you're right. You're not going to pay Sue at a discount. But Dante Fowler, that guy's he's a free agent. Sue's a free agent. You paid Cooks too, so you paid Cooks, you paid Gurley, and you paid Donald. There's not a lot of money to go around from there. So,
what's your take on Gurley? Do you think Gurley was injured and hiding it, or do you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think so too.
I think he was pretty seriously hurt. He looked like crap.
Yeah, I think they kept it hush hush because they wanted the defense to try to game plan for him.
But I think it was one of those things, too, that, I mean, if you look at the Next Gen Sports Track, he was the fastest guy on the field that night. It wasn't Brandon Cooks. It wasn't anybody else. He had the fastest speed. I think it was one of those things that he would get out there, it would feel fine, but a couple plays in, it would get aggravated, and he'd have to come off. So maybe he was lying to the severity of what it was, but, I think that he wanted to get out there. He wanted to play, and he could at times, but he was obviously hurt. So, Oh no, it's tough. If you look at these losers of the Super Bowl, you have Carolina that just ran pure the one year, the Falcons, the Bears, all these teams, they don't really go back. And if you look at the path that the Rams are going to have to go through, you still have Seattle, who's competent. You have the 49ers, who look a lot better. Maybe, we don't know, that hopefully they're better with Garoppolo.
And I think you're going to also see the 49ers make some splashes in free agency because they don't have a lot of high-priced guys on that roster.
Yeah, I mean, so their path is much more difficult versus, the Bills, who are still complete rebuild, the Jets, who are complete rebuild, and the Dolphins that are complete rebuild. Just by product of showing up for 16 games next year, I think the Patriots win the division. I mean, if I had a ton of money, I'd put it on whatever odds that they win the division next year. Sure.
For sure. So, talking about our games we like to play, Mark held on to our playoff challenge. Congratulations to you, Mark.
Why, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. You won there with a score of 300.52. The only one to break 300. Must be nice. I didn't even break 200. I went complete contrarian. So for those listening, we did a snake draft with just the four of us online and took turns taking players, and it was highly entertaining. I went complete defensive. I picked Seattle and Houston and Chicago, and everybody else picked the actual obvious and correct teams. So
it was interesting.
I felt miserable.
We did have a Facebook comment today that and I kind of didn't even notice it, but nobody took Tom Brady.
Yeah, for sure, right?
Yeah.
Nobody took Brady, which is pretty funny.
And we had two quarterbacks each, and nobody took Brady.
Nobody took Brady, yeah.
I didn't think Brady would get out of the second round. I was just taking quarterbacks that I thought were going to get 2 games in. So, I accomplished that. But I noticed that nobody took Brady, nobody took Gronk, nobody took Marlon Mack. There were quite a few people that performed better than the players that were drafted. So.
True story. It'll be fun to do again next year. Maybe we'll get some of the chat room involved next year. Be entertaining. So, but that was great. And the second place finish went to Adam, who stepped out to make a work conference call. But he got you by less than 2 points, Chris. Less than 2 points for that second place finish.
I'm back to take some credit.
Ah, there he is. Hey. Which was nice. And then, of course, so that finished 279 to 277, and I scored like 190 something. So we won't talk about that anymore. I just wanted
you had the highest scoring player too.
I did have Sony Michel, who was the beast of the playoffs. So, all right. So we got a few minutes left. Let's talk briefly about our way too early discussion of who might make the Super Bowl next year. Let's have a brief discussion, and I'm going to put you all on the spot to pick your teams. And I'm going to keep a record of this, and we're going to look back on it a year from now. So I'll start here. Looking through these teams, we were just kind of briefly talking about the AFC side. I really see another run by Kansas City. I see another run by Indianapolis, assuming they stay healthy and make some nice moves. So those are probably my 2 favorite to see come back again from the AFC. Anybody else's thoughts on the AFC besides those 2 teams?
No, I would put it Kansas City, New England, Indianapolis, 1, 2, 3 in that order.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have to agree with Chris's order right there. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to say that Pittsburgh had a chance because Juju's been awesome and Connor has been awesome, but it seems like there is some real discontent in that town, and that does not breed well for championship runs.
No, Le'Veon Bell's gone. I really don't think Antonio Brown's going to come back. I think it'll be another holdout, or he'll get traded or something. There's something going on in that locker room.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see what happens. They look like they're about a year away from a complete rebuild there, sadly, because I really enjoy watching them play.
The one team that I don't think we're talking about that they need to add some pieces, but I think they have it on the defensive side of the ball. I just think that they need a little bit more on the offense. Would be the Los Angeles Chargers. I almost said San Diego there. So I had to kind of slow it down a little bit. But I think if they can get into the playoffs, they can get healthy. I think that they can make some moves. You know, their game against New England, they looked awful. I think that their defense is pretty young. Melvin Gordon was hurt. If they can get another playmaker, I mean, like I love Tyrell Williams and everything, but he's just not that guy alongside Keenan Allen and Melvin Gordon. So I think they're a team that I probably rank number 4.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Ravens, number 5 is where I'm going to go with that. So I'm just picking the playoffs right now. So
Right. And of course, as Unholy Toledo says in our chat room, you know, obviously free agency and draft is not done, but that's why we're calling it the way too early predictions. We'll come back. We'll come back and make adjustments, of course.
But I don't think too many free agents, too many free agency pickups or draft picks are going to really change the dynamics of the team. I think the more important thing, and there are things that have already happened, are coaching changes, and who's going to continue. It's not baseball, it's not basketball. You don't see the same type of player movement in the NFL, at least with the same type of impact. At least, so.
Yeah, and I agree with you. The Chargers, the only thing I worry about the Chargers is, Rivers is getting older as well. They can't get any production out of that tight end spot. We'll see what happens. I know that Henry was hurt all year. But Keenan Allen, he's another guy. I mean, this team just can't stay healthy. So this is a big question mark for me too. I love them. I love that team. I draft heavily from them every year because I just love that offense. But I just really worry they just have a team full of injury risk.
Yeah,
Mark?
and it felt like down the stretch that Phillip Rivers' arm got tired or something. Like the last few games of the regular season and into the playoffs, it just didn't. He threw a ton last year, and it just didn't seem like his accuracy was the same once he got to the playoffs, or the deep ball. Something just seemed off. I don't know if he was hurt or just tired. So.
I mean, he might have been tired. He's got like 10 kids, so I mean,
right?
I mean, but here's the reality: is that the Anthony Lynn commercial was the best commercial, so you got to root for the Chargers.
Yeah, that is true.
I like it. So that's that. On the NFC side, the NFC side to me is going to be very entertaining. I think this is a wide open race. I love New Orleans again, as long as Breeze can keep it up. I mean, Breeze was incredible this year. They got a lot of young talent on that team. I think Michael Thomas is the best receiver in the league, hands down, personally. And I love watching them. It's such a fun team to watch. And I think, is Ingram going to take off? Is he a free agent?
Yes.
So I don't know if that'll help or hurt the team. Could you see Kamara getting a bigger role, but maybe them signing C.J. Anderson down there?
I could see that. I think Kamara will get a bigger role, and he'll be a better fantasy value, which is why we talked a little bit. I'm moving him up my board a little bit, but he's the type of player you can't play all the time. You have to spell him. You need an Ingram.
Sure.
So yes, C.J. Anderson would be a great pickup for them.
Unholy Toledo in the chat room has said that his picks are Dallas versus KC. I can see big things from Dallas. I mean, they really pulled some things together at the end of the season, and Cooper was a huge addition for them. If they get any love out of that tight end spot and, a little bit more consistent play out of Dak, and they could be a threat.
They get rid of Jason Garrett. I'd take him for a Super Bowl.
Sure.
That's what I was going to say. As long as Jason Garrett's there, they're not going to the Super Bowl. It's just you have to win 2 games against high-level coaches, against high-level teams, and it's just not going to happen. I think it really comes down to a couple teams in the NFC. I love New Orleans. I like Minnesota. I think those are probably my 2 favorites. Because, hey, it's Kirk Cousins, man. He's a baller.
Yeah. I like Minnesota too. I'm not so big on the Eagles. Again, I think they outplayed their ability 2 years in a row, and I don't think that luck can continue.
No, and I don't think Wentz is as good as everybody thinks. I think he just had a good run that year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Foles has pretty much outplayed him every time he's been in.
So what about this? And I don't know if you guys listen to the No Mercy pod. I love Jeff Manns when it comes to football, not so much baseball, but I love him when it comes to football. He said that when he was out at Super Bowl week, the predominant team that seemed like they were going to go all in after Le'Veon Bell was Tampa Bay. Now, can you imagine a Tampa Bay offense with Jameis Winston, Le'Veon Bell, Mike Evans?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting.
Godwin.
They just can't stop people from scoring, so they need
It's
to address
okay.
defense. Yeah.
That's okay. They would score 1,000,000 points a game.
That'd be great for
Maybe.
fantasy.
No, I want Bell and Brown in 49er land, people. Let's cut the crap about them going anywhere else.
You're not going to get Bell. You have McKinnon. You have Breida. There's no point in paying another running back. You'll probably get Brown. I like that, but I think Bell goes to.
Sure.
I think he makes the most sense in Tampa. I mean, if you went to Indianapolis, why would you go to Indianapolis? I mean, Indianapolis, in terms of what they have, Marlon Mack, as long as he can stay healthy, has proven that he was a good back. Like, why would you pay somebody different from that?
For sure.
I think Tampa Bay fits perfectly, and that's a team that, I don't know, maybe you get some young guys on the defense and they play a little bit stronger, and they hold teams under 40 and you score 45.
And I'm not trying to sound like a homer here, but I do like my San Francisco 49ers to make a run at that division. I mean, I think they're going to sign somebody into that wide receiver field. If it's not Brown, they'll make a splash somewhere. They've got one of the top 3 or 4 tight ends with Kittle. They have an effective running game because that coaching staff plans it that way, and I don't think it really matters that much who's in that running spot. And if Garoppolo can show any kind of talent like he did at the end of the season 2 years ago, that team can make a run because they can really – They can bring in a guy on the wide receiver end, and they can spend the rest of their time upgrading that defense again.
Hey, man, I'm with you. I like the 49ers. I like.
They're still a couple years out. They're not for next year, but I like them.
Yeah, but you know what? They have Goodwin, who I just think had a really tough personal year that we didn't know about, and during the season at least, and he had a tough time with injuries and Garoppolo, but they just had such a chemistry. 2 years ago, they won me a lot of money, and so I just hope that they get back together and they win me a lot of money.
All right, we got to move on to baseball here shortly.
Well,
who else do we like here for the NFC?
I just want to play one little thing. Is the Detroit Lions will draft a quarterback with their first round pick, bench Stafford, and go 13-3.
I will take that back.
I would too. Whatever you want. Whatever you want.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah.
You were supposed to shotgun the all day, not the hop slam.
Oh,
yeah, buddy.
Shit. Oh,
yeah, you picked wrong.
Sorry.
So we like New Orleans. We like Dallas. Maybe not to win it, but we like them as a team. We like Minnesota. I like San Francisco. Is there anybody else? No love for Chicago in that killer D.
No.
Sure,
NFC.
I'll give some love.
Go ahead. I was going to say, for me, I'm coming back to New Orleans.
Yeah, I think so. I think they're the class of the NFC. Adam, do you have any thoughts on your favorite teams from the NFC? And then we got to make our picks and move on because we're already behind schedule, boys.
Oh, that's all right.
No. I do like New Orleans as the class of the NFC as well. I just think they've kind of been jobbed the last 2 years. They're going to have a chip on their shoulder, and I would be surprised if they were not representing the NFC in the Super Bowl. Any injuries notwithstanding.
So do you really think that they have a chip on their shoulder? You mean like the team that put out together all those T-shirts and the stupid marches and the rallies? You think that they have a chip on their shoulder? Honestly, I hope that they don't make it, just because if you think back a couple years ago, the Lions were jobbed just as bad on a blown pass interference call. And yeah, we cried about it for like a week and whatnot, but God, man, those fans are just as bad as the New England fans. They're like, oh, we're the greatest team ever. Both of those fan bases can just, oh my God, they can disappear.
I hope it's Patriots Saints, and they just have like the screw Roger Goodell bowl.
And then a tie. Nobody wins.
All right, guys, I'm going to wrangle us in here. We got a pick already from Unholy Toledo for his way too early Super Bowl prediction. He has chosen Dallas versus Kansas City. If anybody in the chat room wants in on this, please post it in there now. I'm going to go ahead and say New Orleans versus Kansas City. I'm going to go Mr. Obvious because Mr. Contrarian did not work for me in the last few weeks of the season.
I have no faith in Andy Reid, so I am going with New Orleans, New England.
And I'm going to score this by where they finish in the year for their draft position. All right. Adam, what you got?
I will take New Orleans, and I'll actually go a little bit contrarian and go the LA Chargers on the AFC side.
Christopher.
I'm going to go the Colts and the Bears.
There we are. I like that.
I like it. I like that
Drink
too. I think that would be
Natalie.
awesome. I think that would be awesome. All right. Well, we are broadcasting live on the Legend Sports Network. You can find us at LennyMelnickFantasySports.com. We are sponsored by I'mABeerHound.com. Some great people in Lansing. We love those guys. I don't know if you are listening to the rest of the network or just us, but you're doing yourself a disservice if you are not listening to the rest of the network. After us, you will find Brian Jora with the Mets 360. After him, a Fantasy Fan Sportscast with Easy and Alan. Before us, it looks like a new show, Lucas Pitching, perhaps was on. Every day, JJ Sports Talk at 2 p.m. Every day, Lenny's daily podcast at 9 a.m. You also have several great people out there. The Costly Offside Penalty with Mike Stromey, Nothing But Fantasy with Lou and Andrea, Hump Day at midday. We got all kinds of great stuff out here. So please check out LennyMelnickFantasySports.com. If you go to the recent post/live podcast, you can catch everybody live. There's somebody in that chat room 24/7. There's almost somebody on the air 24/7. And if you scroll to the bottom of the chat room, you can find the schedule for all the shows on the network. How's that?
That was great.
Pretty good.
You should be
good.
a professional broadcaster.
That was very pro. I mean, I was blown away. I'm ready to give you money.
You've been practicing in front of the mirror, haven't you?
Every day I wake up. I set an alarm for 3 a.m. every day, and I come downstairs and I record myself. It's fantastic.
Do you drink whole eggs at the same time?
Yes, absolutely.
Nice.
Yeah, I crunch right through the shell, man. You got to get that protein.
I have Survivor in my head now.
Right. I love it. So we're going to talk baseball. We're a few minutes behind, but we're going to jump to baseball. What was that, Chris?
I was just going to say Survivor, Eye of the Tiger was the first song that I ever downloaded on Napster.
I love it. That's funny. All right, so we're moving on. So we have taken it upon ourselves to attempt to be the beginner fantasy football guide for the channel. There's a lot of amazing. Did I say football?
You did.
I got football on the brain, bro. So we're going to switch to fantasy baseball, and we're attempting to be the beginner's guide for this network. So if you're listening to this on a downloaded podcast, please come check us out. We talk baseball usually about 7:30, 7:45 for a good solid half an hour to an hour, depending on the day. And we're going to try to get you going to start being a fantasy baseball fan. This channel has a ton of baseball experts. This channel is mostly baseball, and we love it. And there's a big place for it in this industry. And there's some amazing longtime pros and freshmen all together here, a pro-am, if you will, assortment of people to talk baseball. So last week we kind of just covered the basics of fantasy baseball and what it is, and how to go about going to some of the basic sites. And so we're going to go just a little bit further this week. So what I want to talk about is I want to talk about the categories that you can select to be counted. So there's lots of different ways. We went over last week that you can play in a stats league, a points league, a roto league where you keep track of the stats and you get points based on your standing in each stat, or a head-to-head league that's much more like the fantasy football setup. But what's more important is how do you count the stats and what stats do you use? A basic setup is usually 5x5. I usually play 6x6 in most of my leagues because I like to get another extra category in there. But we want to talk about the basic categories. So, Chris, what's the basic categories that are most often used in fantasy baseball if you were just to join an ESPN or Yahoo league and use the default settings?
Well, I think one is going to be batting average.
Correct.
I don't like that one, but I'm just going to say that that's one. Home runs.
Correct. Oh, yeah.
Love home runs.
Absolutely.
That one. RBIs.
Yep.
Not a fan, but I mean, they're necessary.
Correct.
Stolen bases.
Mm-hmm.
That's my
Becoming
favorite.
scarce.
Yeah. Well, look. Hey, speed kills, and people
That's
don't want to die. So that's it's why it happens. So, but anyway, let's see. We also on the pitching side of things have wins, which I hate.
Yep.
We have quality starts. What's a quality start? Because I think you said it wrong last week.
Did I? It's 5 innings and giving up less than three runs or less, correct?
I think it's 6 innings.
Is it 6 innings? I thought it was 5. Maybe it's 6.
5 innings is to qualify for the win, but 6 innings is to qualify for the quality start.
Oh, well, look at me.
Hey,
See, I'm a beginner. I need this guide too.
Well, the only reason I bring up quality starter was because it's a better measure of the pitcher, but as we talked about last week, it's something that is harder to get when you're looking at like a Tampa Bay Ray who employ the opener strategy, but also because FanDuel used to heavily incentivize a win, almost to a point where if you didn't get a pitcher that didn't have a win, you couldn't win. So they ended up de-incentivizing the win to some extent and giving some to the quality start. That seems a little ahead of ourselves. So anyway, ERA would be the next one, right? ERA, earned run average.
Yep.
We have saves, right?
Correct.
Saves is a good one. So now that we have those, there's 8.
Uh-huh. Well, we have strikeouts.
Strikeouts, that's a favorite one.
Very, very important. Strikeouts is a big indicator of many things, so I love strikeouts. And, the other ones on the other side generally is runs scored. Is the one
runs,
on the other side.
Yeah.
So those are the basics. So the basics, if you start a league up, is you're going to see home runs, you're going to see RBIs, you're going to see runs scored, you're going to see stolen bases, and batting average. And the reason why those are usually the default is because that's kind of been the basic of measurement when you look at like Hall of Fame hitters in baseball, is that those are the things they look at. Fair or not, those are the things they look at. We didn't always have metrics and deep dives that we do have now. So those are the ones that are easy to compare. Those are the ones that are just straight up stats that are shown on the box scores. They're on the back of the baseball cards. You're not going to see WOBA. You're not going to see, all these XFIPs. You're not going to see these things on the back of baseball cards anytime soon. So these are the basic stats everybody knows and understands. And then on the pitching side, wins, saves, strikeouts, ERA, and a lot of times you see WHIP included or even holds. There's a lot of different ones you can choose. So,
I'm pretty excited about playing in some leagues that have some holds because, I think that the saves, it's tough to get the closers down, especially at the beginning of the season. And I just feel like it's an unfair advantage if you get 2 or 3 guys that, are just collecting all the saves, and you're sitting there with some guys that are running the 7th, 8th inning. It's difficult. So the holds is pretty exciting because you can roster guys like I can't say his name correct. Atavio, is that how you say it? Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. Probably going to utilize him in the one league that you sent me. Sure. And exciting because you can use him, and it just gives you a broader, a broader player pool that you can get excited for. Because when we think about baseball, and I mentioned it earlier, but people a lot of times will say baseball is boring to watch. And we've got 2 guys as part of this 4-man crew here that love to watch golf.
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
I have some thoughts on the baseball thing. We'll get into at some point too, but
it's getting involved in those guys and being able to have some type of personal attachment to it. So
right. So when you're watching the game, you don't want that gap from when the pitcher comes out to when the closer comes in. You want something to be rooting for as a fantasy fan in between those 2 things, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and absolutely. And so having a 6x6 league or something that includes the holds and anything that can get more guys involved so you can have a rooting interest in some of those players when you're watching the games, I think is beneficial to your league and your enjoyment of your league.
Absolutely. And I'm actually a big fan now. I've kind of converted, and we can chatter about this, but I'm kind of in the favor of just adding the 2 together and having it say saves plus holds as one category, because the way the league has changed, there's only, how many straight up defined closers can you even name right now? More than 8 or 9? More than 10? I venture that's probably about the number, right? So it changes so often. People go up and down the lineup. You can get a hold in the 6th inning. So it's really fun to add that in there because it adds another level of play, just like you said.
Well, and I think one of the things that I'd prefer to get rid of is wins. Wins isn't something that necessarily in today's game, the way that the analytics work and the way that the pitchers are pulled from games, is something that I don't think it has the same bearing. It's one of those things where a pitcher needs to rely on the offense, and so you're it's just like RBIs. There are certain stats that I don't know. I think 5, 6 years down the road, I think it'll be a little bit different if people start to adapt into fantasy baseball. I mean, just the same way that PPR in football has become the predominant way of looking at it versus standard scoring. I think a lot of these things are evolved out in fantasy baseball as a result.
And how many times did Verlander take a 0-0 game to the end of the 8th inning, and they put in a closer, and he gives up one single run, and so Verlander doesn't get the win, but he pitches 8 innings, gives up 3 hits, no earned runs, and 12 strikeouts. And that's a hell of a game, and then you don't get the win because the defense blew it.
Well, sure, but I mean, I think even more so is that you have your pitcher in the National League coming up in the 6th inning. Sure. So they pull him out because there's 2 guys on base and there's 2 outs and they need to get a hit to get a run in. So, there are a lot of factors that are outside of your control in some of these statistics that make it hard to kind of draft for the statistics or, just pick your players for it.
We can argue about it. We can argue about that point as well. And I think, like you said, there becomes a way of becoming what is the right way to do things or the most predominant way to do things. There's a lot of chatter out there, and this channel might get pissed off because I know we have a lot of Mets fans that listen in and their National League team, of course. But I think you eventually see the pitcher batting go away. I think the designated hitter becomes the dominant form. I think at some point that makes it more palatable to get new audiences in, to simplify the game, to not have 2 sets of rules. I think it's an unfair advantage in the World Series. And okay, yeah, I'm talking from a AL team fan, a Tigers fan who sat there and watched in, game 5, 6, 7 of the World Series that the Tigers were in, as Verlander and the like are laughing as they walk up to the plate because they know it's a complete joke. They know that they're not going to help, and they know it's just a dead out. And I don't think that that's good for baseball, and I don't think that casual fans appreciate the strategy that goes into when to pull a pitcher. I get it. I love it. It's fun. But I think if baseball is talking about losing audience and trying to get to a broader audience, I think eliminating rule differences between the 2 sides is going to be an easy step that probably will happen at some point.
It's like in the NFL saying, hey, you got to bring your punter in on 3rd down once per half to throw a pass.
Right.
To throw a pass, not hand the ball off. It is ridiculous. I think, look, offense rules the day.
Sure.
When it comes down to it, just like this Super Bowl was not something that was palatable for most people because the offense wasn't there. Yes, the defensive struggle is nice. Yes, the pitcher's duel is nice here and there because there is some tension that builds as that game goes on, but you have to have some really strong ties to one of the 2 teams or one of the 2 pitchers. I've watched a couple games that were, 0-0 ties, but it's because both of the pitchers that I had were on my fantasy daily teams, and I was excited to see them go 0-0.
Exactly.
Otherwise, I want to see the hits. I think that is certainly what baseball is missing is that, you go back 10, 15, 20 years, you didn't have these specialized pitchers. You didn't have guys that could throw past 80 miles an hour. And you got a lot of hits. You got a lot of balls in play. You had a lot of action. So guys like, Mark and Adam could get excited about some of the things that were going to happen. And there's a lot more moving pieces to the game. And I think adding that extra dimension there is exactly what they need. That, and I think making it so a pitcher has to pitch to at least 3 guys. It was a rule change that's been floated out there. I love it. I absolutely love that. Pitch clock, no, not so much. Right. But that rule I like.
Yeah, and here's a couple things on multiple topics you just brought up is the Clayton Kershaws that can bang a home run, these guys out there that can bat as pitchers are very few and far between. The game is different. My son is 14. He's a freshman, and he's going out for freshman ball, maybe JV ball. We'll see how tryouts turn out. But at even the high school level, the people who are identified as outstanding pitchers are almost always just pitchers. They quit batting, they quit practicing, and they focus almost exclusively on pitching. The people that are going to make it to college, I mean, not your average, your average high school team that doesn't have college scout, applicable people. Generally speaking, some of the best athletes tend to be pitchers, and they tend to play both ways, right? But when you talk about a kid who's ready to be a college star, who's ready to be drafted by a team, this kid has been identified. He's done being a batter. all he's doing is pitching, unless he's got some incredible talent at the bat as well, right? These guys are done. They don't bat anymore. There is no minor league, there is no college league that does not have the designated hitter. The only professional baseball league that has no designated hitter is Major League Baseball's National League. It is time to be done with it.
Well, and look, if the pitcher wants to hit, then they can be the designated hitter too.
Sure.
I mean, like, you know, your Madison Bumgarners, your Arrieta, your Otanis, you know, some of these guys do have that skill to do that.
Sure. They can be the DH.
Yeah,
absolutely.
At the end of the day, they're not getting these mega contracts to get that. So that's going to be taken away from them. Look, hey, I think I love taking it away. I love bringing it back in the All-Star game.
Sure. Why not?
You know, requiring a pitcher to be in the lineup, even if they're not pitching. You know, something along those lines to make it
sure,
fun.
it's fun. Or you know, the All-Star game, they do the skills game, and you make the whole set of pitchers do a batting, you know, a home run derby.
A home run derby like that. Like I would watch that. Those are the things that are exciting. It's like, you know, shortly we have a dunk competition coming up in the NBA. Okay, they've got like 4 guys, and they always go with 4 guys, and that's why you just don't have a lot of excitement in that. If you threw 6 or 7 pitchers into a home run derby, I would watch that.
Heck yeah, that'd be highly entertaining. And then you brought up a fact that I've been arguing for quite a while, and I brought it up a few times. My father is a former varsity baseball coach for 20 years, and so I grew up in a baseball family. And you know, he's got a lot of ideas, and he has been talking for over 10 years about this opener in baseball. He's been ahead of his time. You know, he's just a great baseball mind, and he agrees with getting rid of the pitchers batting. But more importantly, we've had lengthy discussions. Baseball keeps trying to figure out why people are not flocking to the game as much online, right? Or on television, that people aren't watching as much. So how do we fix that? And their answer is, well, everybody says the game's too long. How much time do you think it saves to put the pitch clock on? I mean, really, they were all proud of it. I heard them talk about it on the air last year. They're like, we've shaved an average of 7 minutes off the game time. It's a 2.5 to 3 hour game. Who cares about 7 minutes?
Well,
7 minutes fixes nothing.
They're missing the boat here. You know, the beauty of baseball is that it is timeless. I mean, not timeless in terms of it goes forever. I mean, it is exactly. I guess I'm misspeaking there. That it can go forever. You know, the beauty of baseball is that the players are not competing against each other. I mean, they are, but look, in basketball, in hockey, and football, they're inherently competing against each other on their own team from a fantasy perspective. If a guy gets a shot in hockey, that means somebody else didn't get a shot. If somebody gets a reception, that means somebody else didn't get the ball. But everybody has their equal play. The baseball game will go forever if everybody does their job on the offensive side and doesn't get out. And there is a beauty to that. And there's a beauty in the sense that, you know, plays do have a little bit of time to develop from pitch to pitch. They need to integrate more betting. They need to integrate more fantasy. I mean, look,
they need to quit fighting it.
You know, David Stern has not David Stern. What am I talking about? Adam Silver has embraced it in the NBA, and they've talked about different things from integrity fees and different aspects to try and get basketball on point with that. But I think baseball could do it even better. You know, like, look, if you're going to have an opener, that's great, but you have to disclose who the next guy is going to be. I mean, that's important from a fantasy perspective.
Sure, absolutely, yeah. If you got a guy that's going to do 5 innings after the opener, I think you're right. We're going to open with Sergio Romo, and then Chris Archer is coming in the second or third, or whatever.
Yeah, right? Well, you don't have to say when he's coming in, but like, look, you could get so much live betting action on baseball. Like, is this going to be a ball? Is this going to be a strike?
Absolutely.
There's a lot of different. There's a lot of different action there, and look, because the difference in baseball is there's 162 games per team. So there's a lot of games. And so for you to tune into a game in mid-June or mid-July, sometimes you need to have a little tenor on it, you know? Mm-hmm. Like, I'm going to join into this game. I've got an extra $40. I'm going to buy a 6-pack. I'm going to sit here. I'm going to drink, and I'm going to watch this specific game.
That's right.
It's why I love, and I wish they had it more often, is have you looked at Strike Zone on your cable package on Tuesdays and Fridays?
For sure.
I love this. I mean, it bounces around from game to game. It's like NFL Red Zone for baseball, only it's better. Because it's just there's a certain level of excitement with the plays that happen because the tension that builds.
Yeah,
It's
honestly, Chris, if you want to speed the game up, it has nothing to do with any of that. The baseball fans are going to watch baseball. People who aren't baseball fans, the only way that to satisfy the person who says the game's too long, the only way you can satisfy that person is if you cut out half an hour or more, and that's pretty much impossible. So
but if you're
it's
enjoying
just not going
yourself,
to happen. But
if
if
you're
you're
enjoying yourself,
gambling and enjoying it and legally playing, pitch by pitch betting and prop bets, I mean, yeah, absolutely, it's going to be fun. But one of the things they can do to speed up the game, Chris, is institute the DH for everything. Get rid of that poker match. How about less commercial breaks? How about you make those commercials cost more per commercial rather than jamming more in there? There's lots of different ways you can speed up the game, probably by 15, 20 minutes. But realistically, you're not going to speed up the game enough to get non-baseball people to watch a game that they think is too long. It's just not going to happen. So they need to quit that argument and just move on to something else. And I think you're right. I think it's embracing fantasy, embracing sports betting.
Look, it doesn't, like, if I'm having a good time, I don't want it to end at 2 hours. I don't want it to end at 2 hours and 30 minutes. I don't want it to end at 3 hours. I want it to continue to go on and on because I'm enjoying myself and I'm having a good time. If I'm sitting down on a Tuesday night to, watch basketball, football, hockey, whatever the case is, I think realistically, I expect, because of West Coast games over here on the East Coast, to run till about 1 a.m. That's 6 hours. So what if a game goes for 3.5 hours? That doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me going to a game, and I don't think it bothers a lot of people. I think that they're trying to address a problem that just isn't there, and they're trying to go towards people that just don't care. Like, look, who wants to have fun for 2 hours? I do, but I'd rather have fun for 3.
Yeah.
Right.
Can I jump in just a little
Yes,
bit here?
Yes, please do, Mark.
So, the problem, especially when watching on TV, and I'm not talking about going to the stadium, is awesome. It's fun because you have a whole experience outside of everything else. But what I find, especially on TV, is you need the pitch count, the pitch clock, because it's okay. Verlander, we got spoiled in Detroit because Verlander's a fast pitcher, but every other team that comes in, the pitchers take freaking 5 minutes to throw a pitch to the batter. It's I'm going to take 5 signs. I'm going to step off the bag. Oh, I'm going to look at this guy. I'm going to do this. It's like it takes 15 minutes to get one batter through the lineup, and that's where they need to speed this up.
Oh, absolutely. And that's okay, but it's still, even if that pitch count is in and they shave off, it's only going to shave 5 or 6 minutes. But I get your point because people have such short attention spans. If the action moved on a little bit faster, then you would hold your attention. And it doesn't matter that it would take the same amount of time. It's just the action. And my dad hates that the players get to dig into the batter's box and they take their glove and unvelcro it and velcro it and unvelcro it and velcro it.
Yes.
It used to be the second both feet were in the batter's box, the pitcher was free to throw the pitch.
Yes. I agree.
And it should go back to that.
Yeah, and that was the beauty of Verlander. I loved Verlander in Detroit because he didn't waste any time. He knew what pitch he was going to throw. Mm-hmm. By the time the batter got in there, he knew exactly what he was doing. He just rolled through it. He still, don't get me wrong, he still does, but he was really fun to watch.
Yeah, and we had like 3 guys. Scherzer didn't take a lot of time. He didn't take a lot of time. Who am I thinking of that they also traded to the Nationals? Doug
Fister?
Doug Fister, man,
yeah.
that dude didn't waste it. The second the umpire put his hands down, Fister threw the ball.
But I think here's the thing. Like, even going into that, Mark, though, do you think they're taking more than 35 seconds? Because that's what it takes to run an NFL play, and they're audible and they're doing these things. Do you think that golfers are taking 35 seconds per shot? I mean, look, these are other sports.
But the thing is that the NFL is a very intense, action-packed moment when the ball hits. It's not that in baseball.
Well, I get it,
but
I think
I know where you're going with this, and I totally agree, especially with the NFL. The PGA is unique because they can just cut to the live shot of somebody, right? They just constantly cut, so you're not sitting there waiting, and that's the whole problem. And the NFL telecasts, they're getting better at that, but with baseball, it's like it might be 35 seconds. I don't know, but it feels like 15 minutes that it takes to have a pitch go to the plate. And it's not the 3 hours. I don't mind the 3 hours. It's the come on, pitch the ball. I want to see what's going to happen.
Well, and I think that you just touched on a great point that we even kind of briefly touched on earlier is that these leagues miss out on the ability to market these games in the way that the NFL Red Zone does. Like, look, okay, so on the NFL on Sunday, you have the Red Zone. You want to watch the first 7 hours, you can watch it, and you're watching live action play after play after play. The big plays, they filter it out. You don't see a lot of the boring games in between the 20s. And then you have a couple games that you watch, Sunday night, Monday night, Thursday night, and it kind of a little bit of a change of pace. Baseball does that on Tuesdays and Fridays with strike zone. That then they might go live into really tense situations, but they might catch up in a game where they speed through the pitches. So you just see pitch after pitch after pitch, play after play, and you see batter after batter. They need to run that every single night because they have the capability of doing it. They run MLB Network runs coverage every single night. And they're entertaining. They're probably better than a lot of other sports networks in terms of their coverage, but they need to click around to the games more frequently, and they need to do that consistently. So if you want to watch a full game, sure, but if you want to watch just the highlights of the games that are going on, that's what they need to do, because that would draw in people like Mark, for example.
Yeah. No, it's a great
All right,
example.
Well, we have digressed, and we'll get more into this again, but I do want to cover the topics that we were trying to get through today. And what I want to do, Chris, is I want to go through these other scoring options and just kind of talk about them and give kind of the pros and cons to using them outside of the 5x5 that we talked about, okay? So the offensive side, the batter side, like we talked about, it is runs, home runs, runs batted in, stolen bases, and batting average is the standard. My particular league that I've been running for almost 10 years now, we had kind of decided in a group to add our sixth category be on base plus slugging percentage. So what that ends up doing is adding the on base. So the difference between the batting average and the on base is batting average is just when you've gotten a hit, a single or better. On base includes if you got hit by the pitch or took a walk. So that really, to me, I would rather, if you're going to keep it basic, I'd get rid of batting average and I'd move on to on base percentage for me, because I do enjoy the Joey Vottos of the world that know how to take a pitch. And then slugging percentage, of course, is your percentage of big hits. So you get a bigger number for your singles, doubles, triples. The bigger the hit, the home run is the most, is you get a bigger percentage. So it kind of adds the value to the walk and adds the value to the people who hit doubles, triples, and home runs over singles. So I don't know. How do you feel about that category?
No, I agree. Actually, my Dynasty League doesn't have batting average, doesn't have wins. It has on-base percentage, slugging percentage, stuff like that. So it's a little bit more of the all-inclusive and controllable stats.
Sure.
I agree with it.
So there's not a lot of other ones I really like. You can put walks in there. But I think that's taken care of if you just include some sort of an on-base percentage. So I don't think it's necessarily necessary. Some leagues give you negatives for strikeouts. I'm not a big fan of that anymore because the way the game has changed. The managers they just don't care about the strikeout like they used to. It's not such a thing anymore. So, I mean, you got a guy like Giancarlo Stanton, who is an absolute beast of a player, and everybody would love to have him on his team. He's going to strike out 150 times, you know?
I mean, Joey Gallo, he's a guy that if you have a batting average league, he's not very good. But you get on base percentage a little bit better, home runs a little bit better. You took away the points for strikeouts, and then he's not very good.
Right. So, I think I keep that out of there. There is one that I do like, and one league I have it, one league I don't, is total bases. And where that league has decided to keep batting average because they like the classic statistic, we have jumped into total bases. So I don't believe you get a point for a walk. I think that's still a 0, but you get 1, obviously, for a single, 2 for a double, 3 for a triple, and 4 for a home run. So again, it values the people who hit extra base hits, which I think is important, because I think that's a very important thing in baseball is extra base hits.
Now, so it's total bases. Are they getting bases if they get moved around the bases?
No, they are not. That is strictly a 1 point for a single, 2 for a double, 3 for a triple, 4 for a home run.
Gotcha.
So where batting average, a single and a home run affects it exactly the same. So total bases allows you to give preference points to people who hit extra base hits.
I gotcha. It's interesting.
Yeah, I like it a lot. So I've tend to move that in to my leagues. It's one of my recommended categories if you want to go beyond the basics. So I enjoy that one a lot. And there's lots of other things you can do. If you want to go crazy, you can click on a bunch of these. You can have I've seen 10 by 10 leagues. I think that gets unnecessarily complicated. You can consolidate these into better ways. But I mean, you can go in as plate appearances. You can go in games started. You can go track individual hits, singles, doubles, triples. You can do all those things. You can lose points for sacrifice flies, I'm sorry, not lose points, but get a point for a sacrifice fly. You can lose points for caught stealing. There's all kinds of different things, but I think that the ones that we covered are pretty basic. You got to have, for me, you got to have runs, you got to have RBIs, you got to have home runs and stolen bases. So those four are my basics. And I disagree. You said you don't like runs a lot. I do, because it gives value to those people that are in the first and second slot in their lineup.
No, I like runs. I didn't say I didn't like runs.
Oh, it's RBIs you didn't like.
Yeah, because RBIs require somebody to be on base for them to get
True.
RBI.
And the reason why it's there, though, is it's part of the Triple Crown. It's part of, Hall of Fame consideration. So that's just kind of a classic category.
Well, it doesn't mean that just because we've done it that way always, it means it's the right way.
Yeah, but that's baseball.
That is a bad example. Just because we've always done things this way,
right?
Is why we continue to do it.
How many major rule changes have ever really happened in baseball? Not a whole lot.
We should start a league that's all like advanced metrics. Like instead of batting average, they have like batting average with balls in play, and you can have it on both sides, pitchers and.
Oh yeah, BABIP and XFIP and.
Yeah, we could get
Get rowdy. And those leagues exist, Chris. We wouldn't be pioneers. They're there. You can get deep into some of these other sites. ESPN and Yahoo are very limited, but you can go crazy with some of these things. It's highly, highly entertaining. So.
Sure, and I mean, I think that's the fun of it. Like, if you like digging and you like fantasy, like, you should like fantasy baseball.
Absolutely.
It really is it has the biggest sample size. It has the most predictability. And at the end of the day, it is the one. If you were to look at one sport and say, you don't even have to watch it, and you can play fantasy and be successful.
Right.
Baseball is the easiest of those to do.
Mark, I probably watch 12 baseball games a year. I'm not going to lie. I have 3 kids. They're all busy with after-school activities, summer activities. I've got a wife who's taking night classes at school on top of her full-time job. I have events constantly, and I just can't sit down to watch baseball. And I am a very successful seasonal baseball player, and I don't watch games. So it is definitely a sport that you can get into and play in many different aspects without having to watch 20 hours of baseball a week. It can be done.
On the other hand, I have a dog. Her name is Barley, just like beer.
Yeah.
I have a wife. I don't have any kids. I don't have a lot of responsibility. I buy box wine, and I watch a lot of baseball.
Hell yeah, there you go, bro. So on the pitcher side, this has been interesting because pitching has changed in the last couple of years. You're getting a lot more specialized. You're seeing the workhorse pitchers kind of disappear a little bit. You're seeing most teams have 6, 7, 8th inning guys on top of their closers. You're seeing most starters only being asked to go 4 to 5 innings, which statistically is probably good because stats go way down on the third time through the lineup. But it's changing, and so fantasy baseball has to change. So we start looking at different categories for baseball. We've already talked about wins. My argument with Lou Landers and I kind of chatted a little bit about this before, is that the win kind of started being less consequential, but now with the opener coming in, wins have kind of taken on a more important role again, because you're not going to get that quality start out of the guy that comes in the second inning and pitches 5 innings, but you can get the win out of him. And you're not going to get a hold or save out of everybody that comes in the end, but you can get a win out of them. So it's another way to reward the other pitchers besides just the starter.
But the problem with it, to me, is that it's just not it's not predictable. And that's the problem with it. It's so hard. It becomes so random that it's not you're looking from a skill-based, or you want to come from a skill-based position. You don't want to have something that's as unpredictable as a win with an opener kind of cause that for you.
What ends up happening?
Andrea, box wine, black box wine is the stuff. That's the way to go. But no, I mean, look, I was talking to some people after my big 10-cent win on Sunday. And they're like, yeah, there's a low-scoring Super Bowl, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, look, dude, that's actually the easiest to predict. It's easy to predict where the yards are going to go. It's easy to predict where the receptions are going to go. The touchdowns are random. And that's where it becomes difficult. The more touchdowns, the more difficult a game comes to project. And when you're looking at wins and things like that, I want to limit as much randomness in the league, at least to give myself an edge. I think everybody should as well. And that's why I don't like wins.
All right. Well, what it does do, though, is it does prioritize pitchers that pitch for highly potent offenses. So it does skew rankings a little bit. So I get you.
Yeah, but I mean, you're always picking players that are going to be on highly potent offenses. You're going to pick players that are good players on good teams. I mean, that's like, look.
The pitchers are independent from their offense. They don't need a good offense to be successful as a pitcher. So
but they do. They do.
Look, Rick Porcello. But if you got
Porcello won a Cy Young,
it made no difference.
Rick Porcello won a Cy Young because he had a potent offense. Justin Verlander didn't, and he lost a Cy Young because of it. So
sure. But that's still it's inconsequential, though. If you remove the wins, then it doesn't matter if you have a good offense or not. Then you wouldn't pick pitchers based on teams. You don't need a good offense to pick a pitcher. You don't. But by adding the wins category, you do. And I'm with you. I like quality starts over wins. I'm with you. But the issue I'm having is we're losing starters because teams are going to add more openers. And I don't think it's going to be a bunch of teams, but we had like 1 or 2 teams try it last year, and it was pretty successful. So I think you see 6 or 7 or 8 teams try it this year. And so the other problem is a 6 innings pitched and giving up 3 runs is like an ERA of over 4, right? So is that really great? Do you want your pitchers to have a 4 ERA? So that's the other complaint against of quality starts is that really a quality start? Would you be happy if your pitcher ended the year with a 4.5 ERA?
But ERA then, of course, is dependent on the defense behind you. So
certainly. So there's always argument to.
So, but here, to kind of close this out and kind of go off track a little bit, but I get where you're coming from. I just disagree a little bit.
Sure.
I don't think that there's going to be that many teams. I think there'll be less than 3 or 4 teams. Tampa Bay might be one of them, and this is where it comes from. There's that league that you introduced me to or invited me to. It's got Charlie Morton, who is now going over to the Rays, 18th round pick. You think he's a keeper for me?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
For sure.
Kershaw, for sure.
For sure. So to close this out, so there's always an argument over wins or quality starts, right? There are other stats you can pick. You can pick games started, simply get a point for starting a game. You can do extra points for complete games and shutouts, but you're right, those are very random. It's very difficult to predict those things. You could do total batters faced, which I kind of like. I kind of like the idea of total batters faced, where you get more points the longer a pitcher lasts, right? So that's independent of any scoring. It doesn't matter if the guy gives up 10 runs. If he faced X amount of batters, he stayed longer in the game. You could count that. That could be there.
I love that. I really like that, actually. Total batters faced is something that, I can get behind that.
Right, that's pretty interesting. You can choose things like lose points for wild pitches, lose points for balks. There's lots of different things in here, but I think when you're looking at these, the big thing you're going to get in arguments over is wins versus quality starts. And then the last thing we use for our league is we use WHIP, which is walks plus hits divided by innings pitched. And we do that to add, again, value to relief pitchers.
Well, I think that's one of the. It's better than ERA. It's better than a lot of other things. When you're looking at a pitcher to target or a pitcher to stay away from, WHIP is a pretty indicative stat, one way or the other. So
yeah, and I also like strikeout ratio too. So.
Sure. Yeah.
Basically, just strikeouts divided per 9 innings.
I'm just a little blown away. There was a pretty big trade in the NBA that I just saw come across, and
what was it? Hit me. Anthony Davis goes somewhere?
it wasn't huge, but Otto Porter has been shipped to the Bulls for Jabari Parker and Bobby Portis.
That is a pretty big trade.
Yeah, so that's interesting because it looks like the Wizards are still trying to contend, given the fact that they gave a supermax to John Wall, who ruptured his Achilles at home. You guys can't see me, but I'm doing like this weird like air quote thing at home. I think he actually might have been that guy in the video. Have you seen the video of the guy that was at the coffee stand and threw the ice on the ground and then walked on the ice and fell and tried to sue the place? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. All right. Well, I digress, man. We are way deep into it. So, Mark, how do you find us? Where are you listening to us? How do you follow Draft for Upside?
What, are you sick of talking?
I'm kind of tired of talking.
I'm ready for golf. I'm ready for golf.
All right. Well, we're Draught For Upside, and you can find us at draftforupside.com. And that's draft, DRAUGHT, as in draft beer. And you can listen to us live on LennyMelnickFantasySports.com. And we also put this up as a podcast in the morning, and you can find us at various sources like Apple and TuneIn. And we're sponsored by I'mABeerHound.com, so check them out too.
Fantastic. So we're about 6 minutes over, Adam. I do apologize. I know that you are eager to tell me about the AT&T at Pebble Beach Pro-Am.
Let's talk shafts.
I can talk. I can talk fast with the best of them if we need to.
All right. Well, I want to tell you this. In addition to your tipsy pick, Adam and Chris, I would like you to tell me the amateur that will finish with the highest score at the end of the segment, okay?
The highest score or the lowest score?
Lowest score. My bad.
Okay.
Score.
Well, really
quick. Fire away, guys. Talk golf. I'm going to step away because I'm done talking. I'm out.
Really quick, just give everybody a breakdown. This is the Pebble Beach Pro-Am, which means we're going to have like Ray Romano out there golfing with these guys. And this is typical of a Pro-Am, but unique for the PGA Tour. There's a 54-hole cut, which means we get 3 rounds before there's a cut. This is also played on 3 different courses at the Pebble Beach complex. 2 rounds will be played on Pebble Beach itself, 1 round on Spyglass Hill, and 1 on Monterey Peninsula. All these are par 71s. 2 of them are par 72s. Monterey is par 71. They're all under 7,000 yards. One unique note that I found, Adam, in my research is the U.S. Open's coming up here at Pebble Beach, and they're modifying the course right now. So they're letting the roughs grow, and they're shrinking the fairways. So in my mind, I've started out my lineups with driver accuracy. How about you?
I'm still starting with strokes gained approach this week. The fairways are going to be wet, so that's actually going to hold a lot more fairways than typical if it was a little firmer conditions. But I do I'm weighting driving accuracy a little more heavily than I would otherwise, given that they're shrinking the fairways down and making the rough a little thicker than normal. So I like where your head's at there overall.
Yeah, I have the shots gained approach as kind of my number 2 stat. Yeah, and
number 3?
The weather is kind of going to be off too. They're expecting colder weather, like 45 to 50 degrees, and it's supposed to rain most of the week, so it should be very soft.
Well, let me ask you though. In that case, I mean, so I would assume that would hurt the driving distance, but it looked like the winner of this typically runs about a 284 driving distance. So, you know, will the cold weather really affect this tournament as much as others?
Well, with you're asking about driving distance?
Yes.
The one thing with this course is it's not a very long course, and a lot of the fairways, they have a lot of bends and curves in them. So actually, the big hitters don't bring out drivers a lot. A lot of times you'll see people with irons or 3-woods off the tees.
Well, sure. That's what I'm saying is that, like, with the cold weather, is the cold weather going to have the impact? Because I would assume that cold weather has an impact on driving distance, with driving distance not being as much of a important stat this week. Is that going to really have the same type of impact that it would on other courses?
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm kind of fading the driver's distance completely because the course doesn't favor long drivers to begin with, and then the cold weather is going to affect it even more.
Sure.
Yeah, the kind of player I'm looking for are guys that are in really good form with their approach game, and then long term tend to hit a lot of fairways. This week, I think it's going to be imperative as compared to previous years to be hitting out of the short grass. So guys like your Matt Kuchars, your Ches Reeves, guys that tend to hit a lot of fairways and have been hot with their approach game are the type of player I'm targeting this week.
Cooch.
Yeah, I mean, how do you not go back to Cooch? His numbers are just ridiculous across the board. Had a
Right.
chance to win again last week. Like, he fits this course very well. So I'm having a hard time not going back to Cooch. But I'm not a huge. Go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say, I mean, I thought that too, but then I just thought, like, Danger probably liked him, and, like, it just got me off him completely.
I'm sure Danger does like
opinion.
him.
I completely respect that opinion.
Yeah, another stat that I'm weighting pretty heavily. These greens are very small on the whole for the three courses, and especially at Pebble, which 2 of the 4 rounds will be played. And I can't remember if you mentioned, Mark, but it's a 54-hole cut this week for 60 guys. Normally it's 70, so less guys will make it through the cut. But it's a 3-round cut, which is not normal. Usually it's 2, so
Right.
that'll take some guys probably into play that I would normally not play as much because they're a little riskier. But yeah, overall, I like the strokes gained around the greens statistic because the greens are smaller and you're going to have a harder time. You're going to hit the greens a smaller percentage of the time than you would normally with the average tour size greens.
Yep.
Okay, Adam. So I've asked you to basically break down a stat a week that you like to look at. So last week we looked at course history, which is pretty easy to research. Okay, so explain to me strokes gained around the green, and explain to me a web page or area that you can go research this to help people out to figure out what this stat means and why it's important.
Well, I'll give you the website. Then Adam can explain his favorite stat. But PGAtour.com has all these stats readily available, and it's
Yes, they
you
do.
just type your player in, they give them all to you.
So if you want to be a little bit more time frame specific, not just over the course of the entire season, the one that I've mentioned before is fantasynational.com. You do have to pay. It's like $8 a week or $25 a month, something like that for membership, or you can do $200 for the whole year. But it gives you can sort it as you'd like to, putting on certain types of greens, certain stat categories that you want to weight this week. So you can create your own model and then go back for the number of rounds that you want to over a certain time frame. This week I'm looking back because we're relatively new in the season. I'm going back the last 12 rounds within the last 3 months is the time frame I'm looking at. And then from there you can get specific with, weighting strokes gained approach, strokes gained around the green, and then maybe third strokes gained off the tee. So you can weight your model how you choose to based on the course and the metrics that are most heavily correlated with top scorers in this tournament.
Excellent. Well, thanks for breaking that down, because I do play fantasy golf. I do enjoy watching golf, but the actual specifics of how to step up my research game is something I'm trying to learn this year. In the chat room, Malpal has asked, how do conditions line up for DJ? Extremely expensive on DK.
Yeah, it's tough to fade DJ this week because of his course history. He has won this event before. The last few years, he's finished second and third. The last 2 years, 41st the year before that, and then fourth and second. Like his course history is very similar to Hideki's last week. He just won last week over in Saudi Arabia, so he's got good form coming in. I don't love him in crappy conditions. I'm not sure he's a mutter to take a term from horse racing. There are a couple of guys up top I like a little bit more, but everything else lines up for DJ. I wouldn't be surprised if he finished very high up. But I'm not sure he's one of the guys that I like to target in these kind of conditions.
So who are you targeting? I mean, I'm going to tell you somebody that pops on my models right now, and I'm not sure much about him. But Tommy Fleetwood seems to pop up number one on my FanDuel and my DraftKings model. Is Tommy Fleetwood somebody that A, I should look into and invest in, and B, is he going to have the type of ownership that makes it worthwhile for me to go after?
Yeah, I'm a huge Tommy fan in general. He hasn't started off the year great, and he's never played this event before. With that being said, I think you're going to get some ownership leverage with him, and I wouldn't be surprised at all to see him top 5 at the end of the week. He's a phenomenal ball striker. He's from England, so he's used to playing in crappy conditions, has played the majority of his career in the European Tour. So he's a guy that when you're weighting the conditions and that factor in, he plays a lot on coastal courses. It's hard not to like Fleetwood for me because I think you're going to get some ownership leverage. Right below him, you've got Kuchar, who's been super hot. Finau, he might not get his own this week because he's been slumping a little bit, missed the cut last week. Jason Day and DJ up top are two guys that have incredible course histories, and they're just big names. So I do like Fleetwood this week as kind of an ownership leverage play at the top. And just a quick note, Patrick Cantlay at 9,800 has withdrawn. He will not be playing this week.
Hey, what kind of ownership percentage are you seeing, Mark, on Fleetwood?
Give me 1 second, and I'll pull that up and check it for you.
I do want to take a victory lap on Cantlin last week, who was my tipsy pick, and I think he did tipsy pick action last week. The other guy that
I don't know about victory lap, bro. Adam had Molinex, who finished 15th.
Yeah, but Adam knows what he's talking about. I'm just throwing darts at the wall.
True.
What about Roberto Castro? He's popping in my DraftKings model here at 6,900. Looks like no ownership, but it looks like his GRI and DA long-term form look really nice.
Can't say I have many thoughts on Mr. Castro. If I'm going to target him on any course, I guess it would be a shorter course where approaches tend to weigh more heavily. But I got a few guys down in that 6,000 range I like a lot more.
Okay, I got you. I'm just looking at, I'm entering 25 lineups in, and I'm hoping that you can carry me to profitability.
You're going pretty heavy this week, huh? What kind of contest are you playing?
It's a 60 cent per entry, 25 max on FanDuel. So don't get it twisted. I'm not really putting that much money into it, but first place is $1,000, but you get to put 25 entries in. And so I think some of these entries, I'm trying to get excited. Like, you and Mark, you talk back and forth. You look excited. I feel excluded. I just want to be part of the cool kids. And so I want to talk about it. I want to get excited. And so I'm going to put in 25 lineups, and hopefully that will allow me to touch every base.
Well, the golfers are always the cool kids, so you're in the right group here.
Yeah. Really quick, Fleetwood's projected ownership right now is 13.5%.
Yeah, that's a guy that I'll probably want to go heavy on and put him in 25% of my lineups.
Yeah, right now.
And I will say, I think I might see that percentage raise a little bit because as I was flipping through pretty much all of my, Fantasy Alarm and Scout and Tour Junkies and a bunch of the other sites I look at, pretty much all of them are pegging him right now. So he's going to be kind of that guy that might be on the rise at the last minute.
Yeah, I expect his ownership to hover right around 20% by the time by tomorrow morning.
He's literally listed as the pivot play in the 4 sites I have pulled up on my laptop right now.
Yeah, right now it looks like DJ and Justin Day are the highest projected ownerships, and actually surprisingly Tony Finau is number 3.
And I'll tell you, Justin Day does not even get onto the first page of any of my models.
Jason.
Yeah, Jason Day. I've seen a lot of the experts are
Him either.
picking them, but my models don't have them anywhere near the top.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that can, even if the other stats aren't lining up, when he's got great course history and when short game is weighed heavily, like it is here, he's a guy that I'll be willing to take a chance on, even as compared to DJ up top.
What about a guy like Sungjae Im? I mean, we've been on him a couple weeks before. He's popping up pretty cheap in terms of big guys on FanDuel, only at 9,300 and 8,400 over on DraftKings. So he's number 4 for both of them.
Yeah, I don't know how ownership tends to spread out on FanDuel with the bigger player pool in your lineups, but he's probably going to be one of the top 2 or 3 highest owned guys this week. He's coming in with really good form. I've heard him talked up on every single podcast I've listened to, like 3 or 4 of them this week. So I'm thinking he's going to be pretty high owned. And just looking at the long-term stats, I'm actually probably going to completely fade him. There's a couple guys in his price range I like a little bit more, which I'll be pivoting to and hoping to get some ownership leverage there.
Tell me who are these guys? I'm going to cross them off my list right now.
I'm looking at DraftKings. I wouldn't completely cross off Sungjae. I mean, his stats are certainly popping. I'm looking at DraftKings pricing.
Writing them back down on my list.
Yeah, so Kokrak withdrew as well at 8,500, just a little bit more expensive than Sungjae on DraftKings. I like Adam Hadwin at 8,700. He's actually looking pretty good with his numbers for this course coming in. Brandt Snedeker is a guy that tends to play. He plays well here like every other year, and he plays very well typically in kind of crappy weather. He's known for being a good mutter, if you will. So I like Brandt Snedeker. He's down just below there at 82 or 8,300. Yeah, 8,200. So those are the guys I'm pivoting to from Sungjae M. And if you're doing 25 lineups, I would put a couple lineups with Rafael Cabrera-Bello, who's at least on DraftKings just a little bit less expensive.
And he's got a cool name too.
He does. The Spanish names tend to sound pretty cool.
Hey, one guy I've got circled here is Mullinax, because there is I not only did you talk about him last week, but I think his family owns some car dealerships maybe in this area, because there's a Mullinax Ford over here. How do you feel about him today or this week?
I'm actually not really on Mullinax this week.
Rossing him off.
His playing style, I don't think fits this course very well. I don't know whether he's a good guy in the tougher weather conditions, but he's a pretty high ball hitter, long bomber, just not the kind of guy that I'm targeting this week. A couple guys I do like just below that price range, at least what we're looking at on DraftKings, and he's at 7,400. I like Dylan Fratelli. He's a former Texas Longhorn, but he's actually from Europe and played a lot of on the European Tour the last few years. He's a guy that I could definitely see popping this week at Pebble at 7,500. Charlie Hoffman played really well last week. Started to find some form like he had back in 2017. This is a course, or this event, I guess, with the 3 courses sets up very well for him at 7,500. Plus, he's got he used to have the sweetest long hair. I remember watching him with the Buick Open up in Grand Blanc, Michigan. He's had this long mane of blonde hair kicking out his hat, and I guess.
So Adam, I mean, this has been a running, consistent theme for you, that you tend to pick players based off of their hair, their look. I mean, do you factor in attractiveness on the PGA Tour? I mean,
yeah,
I do
absolutely.
in other sports. I do. I mean, hey, look, I'm not judging you if you do, but danger goes off of weird names. Is it hairstyle for you?
Yeah, I'm fortunate to have pretty good hair for a dude in his mid-30s. So
Me too, man.
yeah, I do factor that in. Pat Perez has a pretty good mullet going too. He's at 7,300. Aaron Baddeley tends to have some pretty sweet hair. He's at 7,200. I don't like the guys that don't wear a hat. We should have talked about Ollie Schneider-Jans last week. Had a great week. He's got some great hair. He just doesn't wear a freaking hat.
Look,
On the
hey,
windy course, like we've been talking about, you gotta fade him. But last week it didn't pay off, man.
hey, we're down this rabbit hole. Let me throw this out there, because I'll never have another chance. What about good traps? Are there any guys on the tour that have really good traps? That you think man, that guy's got some good traps. He should be in my DFS lineup.
Elaborate on what traps means.
Trapezoids. Trap is the muscles in the neck. The traps, your traps.
Oh, I mean, Brooks Koepka's number 1 on that list. There's no question about that.
Right.
How did I know you'd have an answer for that?
Brooks is a monster. Well, I mean, I'm a little obsessed, but Yeah, Brooks is the man when it comes to that. Let me get to
Hey, I got a question for you, buddy.
I did not expect this out of the golf conversation today.
I'm looking for this medium low range guy to fit my lineup here, and I keep getting kind of drawn to. You had talked about Fratelli. I keep getting kind of drawn to Glover and Piercy here. Am I screwing up looking at those guys?
Piercy's tough. He's a great approach player. So that's a reason why you would tend to gravitate towards him here. But he's just such an awful putter, and he's particularly awful on POA greens. Like he's in this field, he's 93rd in the last 12 rounds played.
Well, that rules him out for me.
Yeah.
So you like Fratelli in this range still?
Okay, but yeah, Fratelli I like. If we're going down just below that, I actually don't mind Bo Hostler to pop this week. He's a guy that, from what I've been seeing on the social media channels, he's put a lot of work in this winter, and this style of course fits him well. He's not a long driver, but he hits it pretty accurately, and his approach game is typically his strength, his approach and putting game. One of my favorite plays in that range is actually Austin Cook. Number 3 strokes gained approach in his last 12 rounds. 25th strokes gained off the tee, so he's hitting some fairways as well. I like him a lot down at 7,300. I think he's a guy that lines up well if you're looking for kind of a mid to low price range in that.
Hey Adam, I've got another pick here. I'm just curious about, because he kind of like he looks like he has the same type of body that I do, and he has a really nice beard at times. Shane Lowry, kind of, I don't know if he's related to Mike Lowry, but Shane Lowry, like what do you feel about Shane Lowry? How do you feel about that?
He just won a couple weeks ago overseas. He's been playing some pretty good golf coming in, and he's definitely the mutter type. 8,800 is a little bit more expensive than I would like to pay for him. I tend to like targeting him at tougher courses like majors and some of the WGC events that fit his game. But I'm actually off Lowry because I think he'll be pretty high owned this week, given that he's got good recent form and he's known to be a good player in these kind of conditions.
Well, hey, I mean, so Mark, what do you have Shane Lowry at? Like, do you think he's going to? I mean, I don't have him low owned, but I have him at 13 to 16 on Labs, which is not the most reliable. But what are you thinking, Mark?
I mean, I like him, but I'm kind of leaning towards Adam. He's going to be super high owned. Seems like a lot of people are recommending him, so I'm kind of off him a little bit. I mean, this week I'm only playing like 2 lineups, so I don't have him in any of my lineups.
If I'm going that range, I love Paul Casey and Ches Reavie. Those guys, I mean, Casey's just a world-class player. He's a legit top 15, top 20 player in the world. Ches Reavie's been playing incredible golf. This course sets up very well for him. He's number 1 strokes gained approach his last 12 events. I mean, those 2 guys I would take all day long over Shane Lowry, although he does have a sweet beard and a beer gut.
I do.
I mean, it just looks like me. That's what I look like. I mean, I could send you a picture of me, but you'd be like, "Oh, that's Ches Reavie," or not Ches Reavie, Shane Lowry, because he's holding the cup. It just looks like.
I do love Ches this week. He's actually in my model. He's ranked 5th. So he's
all right,
he's
guys,
at the
I
top
have
of
to.
my model.
I have to get at you here. We only got about 6 minutes left, so let's get your ultra value players in, and then let's talk about our favorite plays and picks and put them down to paper.
Cool. I don't know if he's quite ultra value, but Corey Connors at 7,100. His stats are lining up very well. Another Canadian. Maybe this is a theme this week, but Canadians like to drink beer, so it's good for the show. Corey Connors at 71. I like Richie Werenski a lot at 6,900. If we do a tipsy pick, and I'm starting to get a little tipsy, he will probably be mine at 6,900. And below that, I actually like old man Davis Love III. He's at 6,700. He's played this course really, really well historically. He's shown quite well in some of his events this year so far. I don't care that he's 3 years old. The course fits him very well. You know, he's played here many, many times, and this is one of those events that course history, as Mark loves, tends to weigh in pretty heavily. So,
hey, if we're talking about old men, what about good old Jerry Kelly?
Hey.
No Jerry Kelly for me this week.
Yeah. That's my tipsy pick.
Oh, all right. Well, Hey, like I don't know. I knew that he was old because you told me that a couple weeks ago. That's all I knew about
Jerry Kelly. That was at the Sony. That's like his course. Like he's the Hideki Matsuyama of the Sony Open. Like
How'd that work
Becky
out?
last week. Not great this year, but I did fade the old man, I think.
All right, you got anybody else down there at the bottom we need to talk about?
Yeah, one last Canadian I like who Monday qualified last week, and I ended up getting on him a little bit late in the week was David Hearn. Lefty, kind of a plotter, just hits a lot of fairways and greens. And if the conditions get tough, he's the kind of guy that you could see get you a surprise top 10. Probably top 20. 10 would be stretching it, but 6,500. I think he's a relatively safe play to make the cut. Maybe not a ton of upside, but like him at 65.
I like it. All right, so here's the games we like to play. So we're really only going to keep track of the pick to win and the tipsy pick who finishes the highest. The guy we like to outplay his salary is something I just think it's fun to talk about and tend to be like middle range players, so it's kind of fun. So what we're going to do is we're going to all take a turn to pick our winner. I would like us to all pick different players, and then the tipsy pick and to end it, but then we'll do the guy we like to outplay his salary as well. So last week we had Christopher pick Justin Thomas, who finished third. I picked Cooch, who finished fourth. Adam had John Rahm, who finished 10th, and Mark had Matsu at 15th. So Chris nudged me out by one spot there to pick the highest.
Big win.
That's right. I'll take it. And then for the tipsy picks, of course, Mullinex came in at 15, which is pretty awesome for a tipsy pick. John, was it Cantlin, 44th. Sam Ryder at 60th. And poor John Dahlman, who missed the cut for Mark.
Oh,
sorry, Mark.
I couldn't believe that.
We got about 3 minutes left here. So we'll start with Chris. Give me your pick to win.
Shane Lowry.
I love it.
Going bold. Mark, who you got?
I have to go with Tommy Fleetwood.
That's my number 2. Just throwing that out there.
I am going with Matt Kuchar to continue his hot play.
I do.
That's my number 3.
Love Cooch.
I'm going to pick him until he wins, damn it. Adam, what you got?
I will go with Mr. Dustin Johnson. That's too hard to pass up.
Yeah,
That was my number 4.
that was a great
I like
pick.
it.
Yeah.
I love it. Adam, who's going to outperform their salary in that mid-range?
Ooh, let's take a look. See there. Well, one of the guys that I called out.
Got to make it quick. We got 2 minutes.
Was Austin Cook. I will go with Mr. Cook at 7,300.
I like it, Mr. Cook. Mark, who you got in the mid-range who's going to outperform their salary?
I'm going to go with Kevin Streelman at 7,300.
Streels.
I got Shane Lowry.
You can't go Shane Lowry again. Yes, you can. You can do what you want. Nobody's holding
mid-range. Yeah, I mean,
All right, I like it. I'm going to go with Brant Snedeker, outperforming his $8,200 salary.
Mm-hmm.
For my tipsy pick, I'm going to go with the Matt Everyman at 6,200.
Wait, what's the tipsy pick? What's the cutoff?
$7,000 and below.
Okay, yeah.
So Matt Every, or Matt Everyman, who I will call him from now on, will be my guy. What do you think of that?
Don't hate it.
6,200 can't be bad.
It's a tipsy pick. What can you say?
That's right. Mark, who's your tipsy?
Jerry Kelly.
Jerry Kelly. Who you got, Chris?
Roberto Castro.
That was my other one.
Fantastic. And Adam, to close it out.
Richie Werenski, 6,900.
Spell that.
Werenski. And Richie, I don't know, Richie.
Polish. It sounds like a Polish.
Richy, sorry.
I love it. Well, guys, that was a lot of fun. I love talking baseball. I love talking golf. And I love talking to you guys. And more importantly, I love drinking beer.
This massacre is delicious.
I bet it is. I bet it is. Well, thanks, guys. Brian Jora with the Mets 360 is coming up in 5 minutes. Mark, any closing words?
Drink good beer.
Drink good beer. Take us out of here, buddy.
All right. We're Draught For Upside. We're sponsored by I'mABeerHound.com. Join us next week on Lenny Melnick's FantasySports.com. See ya.
Good night.
That's hardcore.